Hello and welcome to another Unreal Engine tutorial. In this one, we're going to look at it's quite a cool feature, I think. Quite customizable, can lend to some very interesting effects. We're going to be investigating static lighting and static ambient occlusion, and share some tips therein. So to get started, I've just gone and resaved the default third-person map from the template, which if you cannot find, if you just go down to Add, then Add Feature or Content Pack, you can add the third person package here, and that will give you access to this map down in the, where is it, third person? Level third person. Sorry about that, got confused for a moment. But anyway, before we kick off with our static lighting, we have to configure our project so that we can use static lighting properly. So let's go up into our project settings. I'm just going to search in all settings up the top. And if we just search for static lighting, we'll find that we have this feature here, allow static lighting. So we need to check this. If you're using normal maps and want to use them for your static lighting, you can check that as well. And while we're here, ambient occlusion, static fraction, the AO for baked lighting. This is very important. We need to make sure that this is also checked. All right, so that sort of takes care of what we need to do in our project settings. File and save all just to be safe. Close that down. Then head on over to our world settings. In world settings, let's search for, this is a tricky one that can really confuse people if they're not expecting it, or they're not familiar with the feature. It's called, what is it? Force no pre-computed lighting. So it's this is basically going to just prevent the engine and your level from using any baked lighting of any sort. So force no pre-computed lighting, we want to uncheck that so that we can use our static lighting. Next, we want to check out our indirect lighting bounces. So the beautiful thing about what we're going to do is that it will work with Lumen, which is great. But when we're baking lighting, it's going to sort of manually calculate all of our indirect lighting. And the more of these indirect lighting bounces there are, then it's going to skyrocket your baking time. So I've got this set to 1. I think the default is 3, but we're just going to set it to 1. That'll give us a pretty good result. You probably won't need to go much higher than 1 using this method. And if you do, just be prepared that your lighting builds the time required is going to absolutely skyrocket. Next, let's search for indirect lighting quality. I think by default this is at 1.0. And set this to 0.25. So same kind of deal. As I said, setting it higher to 1 will greatly increase build times. We don't really need to worry too much about it. We have Lumen doing a lot of the work for us, which is pretty high performing. But so I'm just going to drop this down to 0.25. Can probably go lower. I don't know. 0.25 just seems to get a good result for me and for what I generally use it for. Next, we want to find, not enable, AO, nope, hang on. Use ambient occlusion. This is in the light mass settings. Now, light mass is the component in the engine that's going to be responsible for your static lighting builds. So checking use ambient occlusion means it's going to consider ambient occlusion for lighting builds. So we need to enable that. And lastly, another very, very important feature that we need to enable, generate ambient occlusion. It's called a material mask. Hang on, just let me bring this up. Generate ambient occlusion material mask. This is what allows us to configure the AO with a material. So we basically, it'll allow us to use the pre-computed AO mask material node, as it says in the tooltip, which works just like any other material mask. We're going to hook it up to a lerp node, and it's going to help us out with the customizability and the configurability, I hope that's a real word, of our ambient occlusion. All right, the next consideration we need to make when it comes to static lighting is our light maps. For example, on our static mesh here, we scroll down, we see here under lighting, we have overridden light map resolution. So by default, like say if I select this object and we browse to the static mesh and I just open this up, so this is our shape here. If we go up to UV, see that there are 2 UV channels. Now the first one is the texture channel, and I don't know why, but Epic doesn't really take too much care, with all due respect, to make good UVs for their default shapes. So as we see in UV channel 1, this is the light map UV set. Not fantastic. I assume this ugly looking triangle here is the bottom face, and we'll have two stacked faces here, which would be these flat sides. I mean, there's usually a good reason for everything, but in this case, I don't know what that is. I don't work for Epic. I didn't make these models. It doesn't matter because we can work around it. And if you say, for example, if you are a level designer and you receive some models to work with, it is worth checking this out because you don't want to spend all this time making a lighting build and then only realize that you get really balked results because the UVs are terrible. And this is the kind of thing you can kick back to the modeler and be like, oi, get it together, pull your head in, get the UVs sorted out properly. If we scroll down, or up in this case, no, it is down, we see we have our source light map index and the destination light map index. The source light map index is the UV channel that it's going to look at. In this case, it's 0, which will be the only one that it has when you import it, usually. And then generate a light map on a new channel, in this case, channel 1. And that's what we see has happened here. Now, this is all well and good. You can also configure these outside of the engine and just not produce light maps when you import the model. If you make any changes here, this apply changes button will activate, and you can just, which is very handy. We also have at the top re-import and re-import mesh with dialog. This is a great button because it allows us to access all of those import settings which have been moved away from the details panel over here. In the past, you would have to set the settings and then re-import in order to change it, but now we can re-import with that dialog, so it keeps things kind of smooth. Anyway, back in our level. So the general rule of thumb when it comes to light maps is that the bigger the object, like the more space it's going to be taking up on screen, the bigger the light map should be, and that will produce these nice crisp shadows. Now I've already gone and made my lighting build for the sake of this video, but as we can see here, the resolution of my light maps is quite good. They're damn near even. You'd have to look fairly carefully in order to spot discrepancies between the meshes, but as we can see here, like this big floor mesh, if I scroll down, the light map resolution of 512, whereas this block here, for example, only 128, and the reason for that is because it's taking up much less space on screen, or in the world even. So with those things configured, and we're ready to start tweaking our actually I should mention, if we go into our outliner, look at our lights in question, the skylight and the directional light. We want these guys to be set to stationary or static. Stationary is good because you can change the intensity and the color in game. Static is fully baked. It is the fastest performance-wise, but you do lose out on, being able to configure those things. As with stationary, we can't, and stationary and static, we can't move the lights. That will ruin the baked lighting. So once you've set your lighting up and you got the nice position and stuff, stationary or static, keep it as stationary. It's generally what you would use. Static is for if you're going for very, very high performing games, perhaps for very, very big levels. And your skylight, which I've also got set to stationary here, same sort of thing applies. The skylight is going to be determining these shadow colors, sort of the shaded lighting, a lot of which is being taken care of by Lumen. Like you can see it here, sort of reflecting the green back at these faces. So how much a skylight is going to affect the world is really down to your project and the requirements sort of your project therein. Right. Next thing is this box here, which I've added. This is the light mass importance volume. We need to add this and sort of scale it up so that it swallows everything that we want to include in our lighting build. We don't just want to hit build on the entire world all at once. We want to tell the engine, no, everything inside this space is what I want considered for our lighting build. Now this is good because we don't want necessarily to have large background assets considered for our lighting build that probably aren't going to be lit anyway because they're going to be too far away, and we're going to be doing different things with them. So get your light mass importance volume, finding it in your place actors, light mass importance volume, and just dragging it into the world. Then we also want to grab our post-process volume, which should be in the world. If not, you find it in the same way. Post-process volume, go to details, make sure that it is unbound, which means it'll have this infinite extent. It'll be affecting the entire world all at once. And in here, we want to, we have our ambient occlusion on, but we shouldn't see anything because we've turned this off at the engine level. So as you can see, as I turn this up and down, there's no change. Same with the radius. Now, We can set these to 0 just to be safe, which I may do now. But there's no harm in it because we've already disabled our ambient occlusion at the project level. So we'll file and save all. We can even hit play and just see how things look. So I was preparing our shaders. Here we go. Here's our model. As I said, I've already built the lighting in this world, so we're already seeing build lighting. But then the last thing we need to do after we've saved everything is come up here to build, set the lighting quality to preview just for the fastest rendering time, and then hit build lighting only. Now this will sort of tie up your PC's resources basically, and it'll produce will start the swarm agent, which you'll see down in your little task manager down the bottom, and build your lighting. And then when it's done, you'll be back in the scene, and hopefully everything looks fine. If you do get strange artifacting on your shapes or strange things with your shadows, you may have to iterate on your lighting. You have to change some light map UVs, maybe change some light map resolutions on your models, and sort of dial it in to get the kind of effect that you like. Anyway, now that we're ready to proceed, we can start working with our materials. So we're going to be using the pre-computed AO mask in our materials. If we grab just any one of these shapes, find our material, we'll see that this is a material instance determined by an MI. If I open this, we'll find the parent and open that. And there it is. Here's our prototype grid material. Great, we'll also want this green. Well, really any material that you want to be affected by your static lights, you're going to want to use. So this one also has a parent. Oh, 2 parents. This M flat color, I think this is the top level one. All right, great, we can work with this. And because we want to be using universal values, I might make a material parameter collection for the sake of our materials here. Now, where should I put it? Let's see. I'll go content and I'll make a new folder. New folder, materials. And we want material parameter collection called static AO underscore MPC for material parameter collection. Okay, now we'll open this up and keep it handy because we're going to need it moving forward. So the actual material is fairly straightforward, especially if you've been paying attention to this channel for a while. You will recognize a lot of the same quite simple rudimentary techniques that we use. I'm just going to pin these parent materials to my main window here, and actually I don't think we'll need these instances because we can tweak things with our parameter collection. All right, so we'll start here and start making out our nodes. Now what we're going to need is to be able to manipulate our ambient occlusions UVs on the X and the Y. So we'll start with 2 scalar parameters, set them both to 1, and we'll go AO grunge multi X. Just copy and paste that here for Y. We also want just a general AO grunge multiplier, so it's same kind of deal, AO grunge multi, but without the X or Y. You know what, I need a bit more space. There we are. We'll grab another one. We want, just default them all to 1, I think. AO grunge contrast. We're going to be using a power value. We're just making these ahead of time just to save ourselves a little bit. AO boost. This is going to determine sort of the general sort of amplification of our AO. And what do we need more? We'll go 2 more. Did I go 2 more? Yeah, 2 more. Just set all these at 1. We need a general AO contrast. And oh, 1 AO power, because we'll be using a grunge mat to multiply on top of our AO, which is going to be very cool. And in the vector parameters, AO color. All right, brilliant. The color will be black. We're at 1. All right, save that. Now we can put this to the side for the time being because we're going to build out our material. So the first thing we'll use is texture coordinates. Hold a U and click to get the texture coordinates. This just returns the X and Y, basically, of our textures. If I start previewing, you can see that every point on the UVs of our shape, especially if I set it to a plane, You can see at the top there is 0, 0. This is 0, 0, X and Y. That's why it's black. And down the bottom is 1, 1, which is why it's yellow, because it's maximum red and maximum green. And every location on your texture in the middle there has a corresponding coordinate, which is what we can manipulate using this node. So we'll hold an M and click for a multiplier, which just multiplies two values. We'll come backwards out of this B of the multiplier. We're going to make float 2. This is how we can sort of split up our 2 vector. This is a 2 vector with it's got a U and a V, in other words, an X and a Y. That's our X and Y here. And where is it? Collection parameter. Okay, it's an arrow to bring it up. This is where we'll use our grunge multi-X and Y. Multi-X and Y. Plug them into our X and Y, and I will keep things neat as I go so that you guys can follow along. Oh, I should mention what I did there. Parameter collection. It's a collection parameter. So with this, we can set our MPC here, which is what it's done by default because we had it, it was the last one we made in the content browser. And the parameter name is all of these ones that we've produced. So I do apologize for breezing over that, but it's a simple thing. And this means that over in this component here, we can manipulate these values and it's going to be reflected in every material that has these nodes. All right, so from this multiplier, we want to multiply again by the general UV multiplication. So we're sort of affecting the X and the Y, but then we're doing an overall multiplication of our texture coordinates for the grunge. Scoot this to the side. And now for our grunge matte, by holding T and click, we get a texture sample. We can set this, say, well, we'll convert it to a parameter for one. This will be our AO grunge. Sadly, I can't make this into I can't add this to the material parameter collection. But we can use, here we go, what? Where's the texture? Oh, here it is. So what we can use, if you have the starter content, we can use the macro variation. In fact, we might just do that. It'll be a bit simpler, and we can manipulate it later on. Or you can use whatever you like, as long as it's a grayscale material, or grayscale texture, I'm sorry. So we'll just add that there. Then things will get funny. So we'll hold an M and click for yet another multiply, grab another one of our parameters here. This one is going to just be our grunge contrast. And what this is going to determine is just how much of the grunge is going to come through in our AO. So 0, if we multiply this by 0, it's going to be none, and 1, it's going to be complete. But we can sort of exceed these values to get some trickier effects if we so wish. Okay, the next thing we'll do is we're going to divide, holding D and click, which just divides two values. Plug the multiply into our B, and then we'll right click. We want to now use our pre-computed AO mask. Put this into divide. And this brings our AO into the world. So holding M and click, we can bring in another value here. Our AO, where is it? The AO boost. Which is just going to be another multiplier so that we can boost overall values as we come out of our grunge. And we do want to clamp. So the clamp node is just going to lock whatever values come in between 0 and 1. We're just going to leave this at the default values. It's the wrong one. A little bit hotkey, but it's the power node. This is going to multiply by a factor. And this is where we'll use our AO power. I respect that I might be moving kind of quickly, but we're just laying out these variables here, these controllable parameters. And I don't want the video to be too long. Right, the next one, we Control C, Control V. We want the spread value. Oh, I think I'm missing it. Come back. Let's add another value. This will be our AO spread. In other words, how much it's going to move from the darkest point to the lowest point. AO spread, save, move that back over here. So this guy is our AO. Did I save that? Save. Maybe I have to save my 0. We'll save. There it is, AO spread. Now the AO spread is going to be another multiplier. Fantastic. There we are. Now we're going to need the color, the AO color. So we can Control-C, Control-V, get this vector AO color. Now this one is going to have an actual color associated with it because it's a float 4. And it's going to have an RGB and an A for alpha, rather than like a vector 2, like a texture coordinates, or a scalar, which is a single value. So out of our AO color, we're just going to mask out the alpha. We don't want the alpha channel. We just want our RG and B. Then hold an L and click for a lerp node. This is linear interpolation. So linear interpolation is one of those features which you kind of, once you see it, you kind of get it. But it's going to set a start and an end point here, and your alpha is the bit in between. So it's going to sort of, as we change this alpha, move values between the A and the B, sort of in a way that we can adjust it. And that's how our material masks really work. So just make that go away a little bit, because it's a mask. So it's going to mask, there'll be unmasked and masked values, and this lerp here is how we're going to control that. And the way that we'll control it, the variable that we'll use is our overall AO contrast. This one's supposed to be the grunge contrast, right? No mistake. So AO contrast goes in the alpha. This is the value that we'll be manipulating. The AO color goes into B, and what we want is, oh dear, the result of this lerp here, because this goes into the base color, this is going to be our A value for this lerp. All right, now we'll make another lerp here. We'll get this lerp into the B value, and our color again into the A, and the alpha is going to be the result of this multiply. So the reason we do it like this is because we still want our color to show up, say if the AO is low or set to nothing. So we'll put this lerp into our base color like that and save our material. So it's going to have to recompile the material because we've changed the base color inputs. We weren't just laying down nodes. So this is going to save, and I'm going to vamp here while it's getting its work done. There we are. Now let's take all of these nodes, Control-C, and go over to our flat color, and Control-V. And just like before, these A values of our lerp we're going to put into our base color, and the result into the base color material attributes. And we'll save that, just as we did before. And this is going to set up our AO for all the materials in the world that we're using. So one thing we can do from here is to take all those nodes that we copied and pasted and make a material function. I mean, that's possible. That's something we can do. And that might allow us to even set our grunge material here, sort of outside of a single mat. And I mean, we'll still need to feed in our base color on a per material basis, but at least that gives us a little bit more flexibility. We don't have to copy and paste all these nodes all at once, even though using the parameter collection, we can manipulate these from outside the material. So with all that saved, we can already see the result kind of showing through. So let's kind of set the screen to somewhere nice and attractive where we can look at things. So here we can see some evidence of what I mentioned before about your light maps. So it's the light map UV that's being used for the AO, and that's why we're getting all this stretched sort of finish here. If I hit this little folder, so this object has this grid gray material instance. I'm going to Control D that and then drag it onto our guy. We'll open up this instance. Actually, I've got to jump the gun here. We don't really need these. These need to be scalars. So I'm going to delete the grunge multi X and Y. Hold an S and click for scalar. And we're going to just remake these as in material scalar values so that we can manipulate them on a per object basis. And I suppose we'll do the same here as well. Okay, so let's save our materials. Okay, back in the world. Now, where was I? If we drag our new instance onto this guy and I double click it, so we open it up, go to our dev map. So you can see they're already selected for some reason, the AO grunge multi X and Y. So if I manipulate the X, so crank this up, you can see that we're now getting a more appropriate kind of resolution for our object. And the same will be true for our green here. If I find our material, I'm just going to duplicate that, drop it here, open it up. I thought I could do that, doesn't matter. Just put that in my little dock window. All right, and similarly, I wonder actually if this may work. No, I don't think it would. So we have to duplicate our material again. I'm going to put that there and that there. Open him up. We have to go very far down. Oh, we're in the negatives. So as you can see, we're still getting this very stretched look. Yeah, but we're going to get a lot of AO there anyway. So we'll find this instance. I'll just put this here just for my own sanity. So anyway, we're seeing... I'll leave the camera here too. So we'll just work with this area. I don't want to have to take up too much time. So we're seeing the way that the AO is working, especially with our grunge mat. So let's bring back our material parameter collection and play with some of these values so that we can see how they're going to affect the the final finish. So our grunge multi, that's the UVs of our grunge multi. We can leave that to whatever we want. Maybe crank it up. Yeah, so we'll start to get this kind of tiling effect, which isn't very attractive. Anyway, the grunge contrast, lower that down. The AO boost, obviously, is just going to crank up all of the values. There's the spread. If I lower the spread, crank up the power, we're just going to cut out some of these middle values and just make it a more sort of stark black or white. We'll bring that down a bit. Contrast up, spread. So we're really in this area now where we're just manipulating values and trying to find a finish that we quite like. Yeah, we're just playing now. Just the boost. Hey, where's my contrast? Can we? Yep. Spread and contrast. Yeah, and even more fun is we can change the color. Make some nice pink ambient occlusion. It's kind of cool. So as you can see, anything that's being lit directly isn't going to have any ambient occlusion because there's no ambience, there's no occlusion. It's really only in the shadows that this effect is going to be very visible, and even more visible when we use for example, bright pink. And let's set these guys back to their defaults. Yeah, and if we're not happy with the finish, like for example, these stark edges here, yeah, it would just be a matter of manipulating our settings, perhaps even rebuilding the lighting as we go. As you can see, there are some problems with light maps or light map resolution on some of these objects because we really shouldn't be seeing like this whole flat face here and other such things, or all of this on here. I mean, these things can be tweaked, can all be tweaked and adjusted to smooth out the finish and really get to grips with how your ambient occlusion is affecting the world. So that's pretty much it. This is hopefully it's a good introduction to how static lighting works, how you might use it to affect your ambient occlusion when it comes to your whole world and your whole world's lighting. And it's so much more performant than regular old real-time ambient occlusion, which can be quite the performance killer, especially on low-end machines, because it's a post-processing pass. It means that the engine's going to have to render a whole frame and then apply your ambient occlusion on top. I mean, as we can see, there's also Lumen. Lumen is providing quite a lot of ambient occlusion on its own. If you're really mindful of performance, you can just disable Lumen and use nothing but static lighting. That is an option. Of course, it all depends on your benchmarking and the demands of your project. Of course, I like this effect. This is one of my favorite things. Can make some really tricky effects here, very psychedelic. Yeah, very nice, very cool. And yeah, well, that's it for me for now, guys. Hopefully this wasn't too long. I tried to be as smooth and as efficient as I could. If you have any suggestions, any recommendations, any requests, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video. And if you want to get in touch, the easiest way is on Discord. There'll be a link in the description. And yeah, please let me know how you get on. Let me know if you have any feedback or anything like that, and I will see you in the next video.